Focal points are a necessary part of pretty much any visual art, so no matter what you make, you need to know how to use them well. An environment needs focal points, and so does a character design. What it really is balancing and creating a hierarchy of what's more important and less important. If you treat everything in a single artwork like it's all equally necessary to look at, the results will be confusing and sometimes chaotic. In other words, you need to use various methods to make some parts of an image stand out, while others fall back. There isn't just one way to make a focal point, and you should implement more than one of the ways in the same illustration or design if you want to make it work really well. The first of these that you should know and practice is clusters and outliers. When you have a group of things closely packed together, but something is separated and distant from that group, that outlier becomes a focal point. In this group of people, there isn't a clear main subject to look at, but by moving them around, there becomes a person that stands out, for no other reason than that they are the outlier, not overlapping with the clusters of figures around them. Next is detail, probably one of them that you're more familiar with already, but still something that can be easily overlooked. Maybe it isn't so much that you need to remember to put more detail in your places of importance, but that you should avoid putting so much detail in places that aren't so important. With so much detail all over this entire character, none of the details seem to really matter and it just looks messy. So it's better to leave the areas that don't need as much attention more simple. Third is contrast. A person will naturally look at wherever in the art there is the biggest range of light to dark. This can take some thought and planning to implement, since, at least in the case of lighting environments, you can't just put high contrast anywhere without logical reason. Here I've put light sources in the focal area so that it's the area with the lightest value, and then the surrounding spaces fade into shadow. Be sure to view your work in grayscale to check more carefully if the highest points of contrast are in areas that are meant to be focal points, and not somewhere like a random spot near the edge of the frame, which would distract from what really matters. Same as detail, you may need to think more about lessening the contrast in unimportant places, which will bring out the focal points more. A good composition will guide the viewer's eye towards the areas of the piece that matter most, and this is often done with other elements somewhat literally pointing towards them. If you put a character on a path, the lines of that path lead towards the character, or also the ripples behind a boat lead towards the boat. Even a character looking at something can create an invisible pointing line and make what they are looking at a focal point. Sometimes you can do this unintentionally, even if you've never learned how to use this in your work, but being aware of this option will let you really use it to the fullest. Color works similar to how clusters and outliers do, since one thing being a standout color compared to everything else makes it stick out and look significant. This is especially the case if the most common and least common color in the art are complementary. Little Red Riding Hood walking through a green forest really pops, and so does a golden throne in a purple room. Like how the focus of a camera can be used to blur out distracting detail, you can do the same for illustrating scenes. You could also call this sharpness versus softness, and this could mean using a Gaussian blur on background or foreground elements to put them out of focus, or using very sharp details and focal points compared to looser brushwork elsewhere. There is more than this that you could take into account, but that was all that I find most useful and relevant. I recommend making a note of these in your PureRef board or wherever you will easily be able to refer to. That way you won't forget any, and you can easily pick out what you'd like to use in whatever you're working on. Here are a couple other videos you might find interesting. Thanks for watching!